practice a few more. Let's look at x squared plus 7x plus 10. Again, there's no GCF here, and same thing as before, I have two positives. We know that's going to be two positives that we're going to look at. So first thing, let's write our factors of 10. So the two numbers that multiply to be 10. So we have 1 times 10 and 2 times 5. Those are our only options. And when I add those, the first one's give me 11, and the second give me 7, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a 7. So my factors are 2 and 5. So let's draw our two sets of parentheses. Again, our first term is x squared, so I need an x and an x. And then we said the factors were a positive 2 and a positive 5. And those multiply to be 10 and add to be 7, so I know that I have solved that correctly. Okay, so let's do example 4. Now here our signs are a little bit different. So in this case, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be positive 2 but add to be negative. So the only way you can multiply to be positive and add to be negative is if both your signs are negative, because a negative times a negative will be positive, and when you add two negatives, you'll get a negative answer. So that helps me with my factors of 2. So first of all, 2 is prime, so my only option is 1 and 2, but they both have to be negative. So negative 1 and negative 2. And then when you add those add to be negative 3, which is what I needed. If this didn't work, then this would be prime. It would not be factorable, because that's my only option. And sometimes quadratics are not factorable, so we can't factor every single one. So we're going to put an x and an x for our first terms. And then we said the two factors were negative 1 and negative 2. And those do multiply to be a positive 2 and add to be a negative 3. So we factored this correctly. Okay, so now let's look at when c is negative. In this case, negative 12. The only way you can multiply to be a negative 12 is if your signs are the opposite. So this is going to give us a lot more options here. So I could have 1 and negative 12, but I could also have negative 1 and a positive 12. 2 and negative 6, negative 2 and 6, 3 and negative 4, or negative 3 and 4. So a lot more options when you have opposite signs. Then you're just adding these up, and you're trying to find when your middle terms add up to be, you want these to add up to be a positive 1, because that's the number in front of x. So if I add these, I have negative 11, 11, negative 4 and 4, negative 1, and a positive 1. So the last one, of course, is the one that works. And most of the time I do try and pick the numbers that are closer together first before I would pick a 1 and a negative 12 when I'm trying to factor, because usually that's going to work more often. So let's draw our parentheses. So first terms are x squared, so we're going to have an x, and then we said the two factors were negative 3 and a positive 4. That multiplies to be negative 12 and adds to be a positive 1.